Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book from the Child Poverty Action Group. It's a book I've reviewed before in the past in a series of handbooks. This one's on the council tax. It's called the Council Tax Handbook. It's now in a 12th edition and it's been edited by Alan Murdie and Paul Moorhouse. I've given it a title for the book review as follows: "Needed more than ever," said a resident to us, as council tax rises bite from 2019, and that's probably what is going to happen. Let's look at the book first of all. It's a paperback, there we go, very much the house style for CPAG. There's something on the back, but it's probably a bit difficult to read. I borrowed a little bit of that for the review. The back of the book has an index by page numbering, which is relatively easy to follow. Do read the important bit about how to use the index at the back if you're looking for something very specific. Front of the book, there's the front page. Then you've got some blurb there about the book. Information about the authors, very experienced people, extremely lucky to have their input. There's some acknowledgements which I will be referring to in the review. Then you've got the contents section. There are 12 chapters in total. It's setting out exactly what's available. There are 4 appendices, and then there's the index at the back. Then there's some abbreviations, always of help in this area. Very complex, and people can get very nervous about dealing with local authorities, and not surprisingly. Having been a councillor, I'm well aware of what happens. There's chapter 1, which is the overview, and you've got a little index, and then you've got the basic statement about what this book's about. It says this handbook describes council tax as it operates throughout England, Wales and Scotland. It should be of value to taxpayers, advisors and administrators. And I'll explain a little bit more. Then you can see the shaded areas there, which tells you where the chapters are. And let me just show you the back of each chapter. They have a notes section, and that notes section links to the footnote numbers because that gives you specific information about regulations. Because basically a lot of the problems with the council tax are bureaucratic. It's like the general taxation system. The whole system is completely unworkable in reality because most people don't actually understand. In fact, no one, including the most senior lawyers I've ever come across and the politicians, no one understands the tax codes and no one really understands the system that's been devised. I blame Gordon Brown for this and successive chancellors for not gripping the matter properly. Hopefully one day it will. In the meantime, we have a very difficult system which puts an awful lot of stress on an awful lot of people. Now, the reason I'm doing this review is to point out that from 2019 onwards, we are probably going to find fairly sharp rises in council tax rates. The taxation level will increase, and I think it's important for individuals to know what their rights are. And this is where the book comes in. So this is what I say. The new 12th edition from CPAG, called the Council Tax Handbook, arrives, and it's 2019. I'm recording this at the beginning of the year 2019. It arrives at an important time for the history of this form of taxation. In our view, the book will be of great assistance, as I've indicated, and value to taxpayers themselves, that's the local council taxpayers, advisors, anybody advising, citizens advice, or whoever they might use, pro bono, advocate as it's now called, or other systems, and of course administrators, certainly in local government, as well of course as elected representatives, that's councillors, who may be dealing with personal cases. And I do know that, having been a councillor myself, that there can be a very substantial disagreement between the behaviour of the financial branch of a local authority and the resident. And I have found with my dealings with the local authority finance branches that they are really very unpleasant people, and I make no bones about that. And if they are watching this video, I hope they realise that they must behave, or try to behave, generally speaking, a little bit more reasonably with the council taxpayer. The reason I say that is because that is a major problem which we as elected members have had to face for some considerable time. Every time there's a change of government locally, you get back to the old position where in fact there is massive harassment and bullying by local authority finance departments against the voter. That actually transfers to an attack on the people who've been elected. I know that to my cost, and I say that quite bluntly because, frankly, we as elected people are the ones who take the can for their bad behaviour. And of course, the problem we have with this system of taxation is that it is extremely difficult to understand how the system actually works. However, this title, I think, has been rightly described as the most widely used practical guide to all aspects of the council tax in England and Wales and Scotland, and it remains an invaluable resource for all affected by this tax. It's been fully updated, and it covers recent changes to the legislation, case law authorities, and both court practice and procedure. That again is quite important, and let me just say in the appendices we found them particularly important for unrepresented parties fearful of what they may face when they're up against a local authority who normally will have lawyers. We found Appendix 3 particularly helpful, setting out the standard content of a letter requesting an adjournment in, say, the Magistrates' Court, which is the normal court. And always remember to serve a copy on the local authority as well of anything that you actually submit. Of course, it is a Magistrates' Court matter, it's not a county court matter, and that in itself is something that Parliament should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves, because this should be actually in the county courts, it should not be in the magistrates' courts. However, that's their decision. Again, it's a wrong decision, but one day, hopefully, the council tax will be reviewed properly. It could be earlier than you think, because I think the council tax rates are going to go up very steeply now that there's a relaxation in what the rate setters can set in the local authorities each spring. Now, Murdie and Moorhouse have included information for undergraduates covering student halls of residence and advice concerning empty or second homes, both of which the information imparted is extremely helpful. The greatest benefit, of course, of this annual handbook concerns essential guidance on all aspects of how council tax collection is enforced, including methods used for recovery in view of the highly privileged position local authorities enjoy, especially in the courts. And again, that's another area where I believe there are certain problems, because they do get privilege when it comes to the way in which the matters are heard in the courts. I think, again, the listings need to be looked at, and hopefully we may be moving into a new era with the online courts, but don't hold your breath. Now, the many practical examples in this handbook of issues which arise involving the administration of council tax are extremely helpful. They're great help, I think, to the general public. I think they will be of help, actually, to people in town halls as well. And I do hope that they have a copy of this book available. It should be in every public library. We found the comprehensive Guide to Council Tax Reduction Schemes of great help and comfort to those worried about where they stand when they face any form of conflict with those in local government. And frankly, that has been always something I have had great concern about with all the pro bono work, and which I do, and which the law centres and citizens' advice face. The handbook explains the following issues which may arise, including those who are liable and who may be exempt from paying council tax, how homes are valued for tax purposes and how valuations can be changed, the position of students, which I alluded to earlier, discounts and the new reduction schemes, the extensive powers of local authorities in this area, and finally tax collection, appeals, enforcement and bailiffs' powers. And they do use the bailiffs on a regular basis, and they bankrupt people, so just bear that in mind, because there is no such thing as morality or ethics when it comes to the collection of this tax, as I have found with the behaviour of the people I've been up against. Frankly, in many courts, the behaviour the local authority employs has been disgraceful. And I say that quite openly because I have actually seen what happens in the court system. And the judiciary, by the way, do pay council tax as well. So I hope local authorities bear that in mind. Let me actually conclude by saying that this book has been fully cross-referenced for local government case law authorities and regulations, and you'll find the cross-referencing very helpful. The notes at the back of each chapter also will be helpful. Murdie and Moorhouse have filled it with lots of everyday examples of problems, making it an indispensable guide for a range of readers, including, as I've said before, and this is a longer list, the taxpayer himself or herself, advice agency staff, housing and consumer advisors, lawyers of course, and advisors in pro bono organisations and all centres, excuse me, local authority administrators, and of course anybody else needing to understand the council tax and its application. Now, always ensure that you have the most recent edition of the handbook. This is the 12th for 2019, because both law and practice do change. The handbook, and it's mentioned in the acknowledgements, the handbook was published on the 4th of December 2018, and the law described in this handbook was correct as at the 1st of October 2018. And of course, with everything in turmoil within the Westminster Parliament, we will be having a further budget, certainly in 2019 at some stage, once we get through the Brexit problems. But having said that, this is the current law. So here's the book again. That's the front page, or the front part of it. There's the spine, and then on the back you can see it. It's £26. It's a very cheap book, and it's well worth having if you've got any problems. Let me just open it in the middle. We've got here disability reductions. That's an important area. That's chapter 6. And one that I would like to point out, because it's one that does crop up a lot, chapter 11 deals specifically with appeals. We'll get to that. There we go. You see again, you've got the little bit of short index for the chapter, and it talks about valuation tribunals. Again, an area of very substantial emotion and controversy. This is a very difficult, I have to say, having been involved now for many years with the council tax, this is a particularly difficult area. It's been made far worse by Parliament, because Parliament passed the wrong pieces of legislation and have given local authorities too much power. It's exactly the same sort of comparison with the BBC licence fee issues which we've had, where again the BBC have got far too much power, and as a result a large number of people have got criminal convictions and are quite often in custody on what are actually pretty trivial matters, when in fact my submission is all these matters should be dealt with in the county court and be non-criminal. However, I've had my piece, said my piece. I'd like to thank CPAG very much indeed. These books make our lives so much easier when we're trying to advise people who can be very, very desperate and very worried about what they're facing. So thank you to everybody concerned. Bye-bye.